But the CATO Institute basically concluded that the school funding system in America is not broken. It just doesn't work. It's antiquated. It's outdated. I think Roger said a few moments ago, he believes there's a day sooner than later when there'll be no brick and mortar schools. I'm not saying I believe there'll be none, but there'll be far fewer because of the internet and technology and innovation, the way people learn. But Rev, what I've argued from the beginning is if we need the money to improve the facilities, let's conclude. Let's you and I say, okay, we've gotten there. We need to spend X number of dollars to improve our dilapidated facilities. Whether it improves education or not, we need to do that. Then let's do that. But let's do it because the facilities are unsafe and insecure. Let's not do it saying it's going to make economic development better because it's going to improve education. That's not true. Yeah. There is no evidence, no example. Some honesty. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, let's say, hey, the schools are unsafe, they're insecure, and we got to improve that. Therefore, we're going to have to do something about the mobile units and the lack of security at these high schools and how many entry points we have. But see, people who want what they want will say what they have to say to get what it is they want. And they're running around saying, well, if the buildings are better, then the education naturally will improve. There is no evidence to suggest that. And I want to go back to the Deloitte comment. I mean, they spent multiple millions of dollars. And here was their conclusion. We do not claim that the school funding system is fundamentally flawed. Only that there is no correlation at all between the level of per pupil funding and educational outcomes. Now, that isn't what a lot of people want to hear. A lot of people want to hear something incredibly different. Let's go to trends in public education since 1970. This is per the CATO Institute. It's a graph. It starts in 1970 when we really started keeping data on public schools. We started doing some analysis. We got some records from 1970 until 2019. So we got about 50 years worth of track record. The total cost is what the CATO refers to as the amount spent on kindergarten through 12th grade, educating a student in public education, graduating in the given year. And I got a graph here from 1970 to 2019. They've adjusted these numbers for inflation. So this is dollar for dollar. This is not, obviously it costs a lot less than 1970. No, they've adjusted dollar for dollar. In 1970, we spent $56,903 per pupil, kindergarten through the 12th grade. Today, we're spending about $179,000. Now, that's not real. I mean, that's not 1970 money and 2019 money. They've accounted for inflation in there. So we're spending 3 times, nearly 4 times as much now when you account for inflation. And that's unfair to say, well, obviously, Ken, it's going to be 4 times because things are more expensive. Has nothing to do with that. Well, here are the 2 things that have absolutely gone crazy. The number of employees in public schools is up by about 100%. The money, as I said, accounting, including inflation. The rate of inflation as prescribed by CPI, the amount of money spent has increased about 230%. So we got a 230% increase in spending per pupil. We got about 100% increase in total employees in public education. The enrollment is up about 7% in public schools. That surprised me. It's only 7% increase in enrollment in public schools. Guess what is flat? Guess what has not changed at all from 1970? From the time we spent $56,000 to the time we spent $179,000. Guess what hadn't changed at all? Reading scores, math scores, science scores, SAT scores. Well, the SAT is not a fair. Well, that's about as fair as you can get in how a child or kid or young person is advancing in their reading and mathematics skills. That's what it is. It's basically a judge of whether a kid's better at math now than he was when he started, and whether a young lady is better at reading and comprehension than they are. So we're spending about 200% more money, accounting for inflation, got about 100% more employees, got some more kids. Obviously, we got more kids, but there's been a big groundswell of about 15% of kids go to private school now. Back in 1970, only about 2% went to private schools. So there's been a lot of kids taken out of the public schools, put into private schools, because parents just didn't feel like their kids were getting adequately educated. So when Dale called earlier and said, I just don't know that more money's the answer. Well, I mean, there's data that shows it's not. There's a 50-year track record of, once again, spending up 200%, accounting for inflation. Got 100% more employees in public education. We got a few more kids in public education. And reading scores, math scores, and science test scores are static. They haven't changed at all. And we believe the answer is to spend more money? How do you defend that? See, I think the harder defense is spending more money. Now, in this politically correct, enlightened, woke culture, anybody that doesn't want to spend money is a knuckle dragger. You know, and a NASCAR fan and a simpleton that doesn't understand the complexities of this modern age and era we live in. No, you're really selling something that should be, if we had an informed public, unsellable. State-level academic performance data are either non-existent prior to 1970, or the SAT, which is an unrepresentative of statewide. I mean, you got different state scores. I mean, South Carolina averages this. This analysis that CATO did adjust state SAT score averages for factors, and here's where a lot of educators will argue, such as participation rate. In other words, they don't test all their kids. You know, that's why their test scores are higher than ours. It adjusts for that. It also adjusts for student demographics, which are absolutely known to affect outcomes. And these SAT score trends go back to 1972, and guess what? They're no different. They're no different than they were in 1972, and we're spending 200% more money accounting for inflation. So for someone to say, well, I want to, we got to spend more money on public education, the answer is why? The performance of 17-year-olds has been essentially stagnant across all subjects, despite a near tripling of inflation-adjusted cost of putting a child through K through 12 in our public school systems. That is the conclusion that Deloitte made. That is also the conclusion that the CATO Institute made. And they have done, it's 60 pages. And you can read every word of it. It is state by state. It's grade by grade. It is as detailed. Took about 2.5 years to complete.